I'm Nora Mulligan. I'm the head of adult services at the Field Library in Peekskill, and this is Halloween, which is one of my favorite seasons of the year. And for Halloween, we are going to share with you some of the wonderful stuff that the Field Library has for horror, for scary books, for creepy books, for music, for movies, everything. And I'd like to start today with a classic. The classic is Robert Louis Stevenson, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now, everybody knows the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde is just one of those phrases that people throw around. It's been made into movies multiple times with all kinds of different characters. Even Bugs Bunny did a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Everybody knows the story, right? Mad scientist makes this potion, drinks this potion, turns into a monster. You know, pretty classic stuff, except that's not what the story is. If that's all you know about Jekyll and Hyde, if all you know is the movies and the cartoons and so forth, then you owe it to yourself to read the book. And one of the reasons you really want to read the book is because it's a very short book. It's a fast book. You can read it in a couple of hours. And even though Stevenson wrote it in 1884, more than 100 years ago, the structure of the book, the narrative style, is so sophisticated that authors these days would do well to study it just for the form. You start out the book not with the mad scientist, the crazy doctor in his lab making this terrible potion. No, you start out with a very boring man, a lawyer, telling a story. And the story that he's telling is of some horrible man who tramples a child in a public street in front of witnesses and does it with joy. Well, that's pretty horrible. But what struck the lawyer as strange is that the man then runs away and runs into the house of the well-respected Dr. Henry Jekyll, whom the lawyer knows. From that point on, we see incidents with Mr. Hyde, whom we later learn his name, and with Dr. Jekyll. But we don't hear from Jekyll himself until the very end of the book. Various people tell stories. They tell stories of Jekyll's changing his will so that Hyde will inherit. They tell stories of a horrible murder, a motiveless murder that seems to be tied to Mr. Hyde. They tell stories of incidents that happen that seem to be related, maybe. But it's only at the very end that you get the whole story, when you hear the story from Dr. Jekyll himself. And you hear why he did what he did. You hear what it felt like to realize that he could become somebody else, somebody much different from himself. And the truly horrible part, when he realizes he no longer has control over when he turns into Mr. Hyde or not. The book is terrific. It's short. And by the end of it, you may even find yourself feeling a surprising sympathy for Mr. Hyde, which you wouldn't think from any of the movies, because he's never a sympathetic character in the movies. Do yourself a favor, give yourself a treat. This Halloween, read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Read it as if you had never heard the story before. Read it as a reader in 1884 would have read it. You'll be blown away. Trust me. Thanks.